So that holistic view is important. And if you're only in it for yourself or only in it for your direct team and not looking at it from an organizational level, that's where you're probably going to go wrong. So that's probably the most important thing. You have to take a holistic look in everything you do.
Welcome back to another episode of the Revenue Reimagined podcast. Stoked to have with us today Chris Eldridge, the EVP of Operations at InfluenceLogic, a friend of the show, someone that we've known for quite a while, that we've wanted to get on the show for quite a while, but Dale forgot to send him the email until I finally sent him the email. That it's not your time to talk. It's my intro. Until I finally sent him the email. And here we are. We are stoked to dive super deep into RevOps, not just from the lens of a practitioner, but from the lens of an investor as well. Chris, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been a while. Long time listener, first time caller. I'm looking forward to this.
Chris, thanks for joining. Sorry I was a little bit late. We're having hurricane season around here. One of the things that we like to talk about when we first start off is why did you actually start through RevOps? What makes you excited about RevOps? Why is RevOps so important in general to any type of organization?
Absolutely. I mean, it was a very strange journey for me and for most people, I think, in RevOps. I mean, I never really knew what I did. Going to Thanksgiving or holidays with family, that it was always the question. So like, what do you do? And my answer was, I don't know. I just show up, I click some keys on a keyboard, and that's sort of what I do. But I was always fascinated with operations of the company. I was always fascinated with then being able to take technology and help scale that part of the different parts of the company. And then from there, I started getting invited even, early in my career to boardrooms and important meetings. And I was hearing decisions getting made. And just because I was, very well networked inside these companies, I started realizing that those decisions were impacting different parts of the organization and they had no idea what was coming. So I was almost like this undercover ops guy that was going to these other departments and saying, this is going to be happening to your department. You should probably start talking to this person. And through that, I realized that was my superpower. My superpower was sort of being that super connector inside the company. But I also was the person that had the technology available to connect them properly. And it wasn't until someone actually told me, hey, okay, cool. So you're a RevOps guy. And I was like, what's RevOps? So I did some research there and I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I finally have something to say at Thanksgiving and Christmas. But now the question is, so what is RevOps? And I start to go into that and try to explain it. And it's still a little bit convoluted because there are so many things that RevOps covers. So operations is normally how I get by.
So it's interesting because ops and RevOps can be different things. Mm-hmm. And RevOps means different things to different people. And I think whether you are an operator, an investor, a C-level person, RevOps definitely means different things. Where do you think the overlap is? Where's the overlap in RevOps and an investor and RevOps as an operator?
I mean, I think they do go hand in hand. There is that overlap that you see is really just how organized is your organization? How well do they communicate? How far apart are the silos? And when you're an operator, like a C-level executive, you're looking for people to be, experts in certain areas. And, when you're just starting off as a startup, you hire people that are specialists in these individual areas, and then they start to grow their departments out. They now have, sales. They now have a bunch of different salespeople, and then they need help coordinating that department. And they hire a sales ops person. And then you have customer success, and they get customer success, folks, and then they hire a CS ops person. So when you're early on in an organization, that's fine. That's fine, and you need that. But at some point in time, it needs to come together, and RevOps sort of puts the glue because you're building these silos, and the longer you wait, the farther it gets. And then from an investor standpoint, we are looking for growth. So going off and moving fast and breaking things in those silos is okay up to a certain point. And if I'm looking at the C-level executive from an investor standpoint, at that early stage, I just want them to be aware and know that this is happening and that silos are forming. And at some point, they are not going to be able to scale unless those silos are broken down. And the people that do that are RevOps people. And you might actually take some of those ops people from the different departments and create a RevOps department, which is fine because then you have a share of knowledge between them. But there is a certain point, and I would say typically it's around, rounds are fluid now, but it's between A and B, late A, B round of funding, that you really should have a solid RevOps foundation in place, because that's the point in time that you're looking for your company to scale big time. You're getting an influx of money. You're going to hire a ton of salespeople, and that process, that revenue engine that you've now built needs to be in a solid place, or, things will break down the road.
And
is that too late? Sorry,
Dale. Yeah. I'm just going to say the same thing. Like, it seems like it needs even earlier now.
I would agree. I would say, like, by B, you have to be like a perfectionist to the point that you can just go ahead and start inputting someone into the engine. It's just going to work. I remember being at some early startups where new people were coming through the elevator every single day, and I had no idea if they were the delivery person from FedEx or if they were a new person joining one of the departments. And we got so good at having a revenue engine that we can put anyone into, that we were able to scale that quickly. And at that point, we went from like 30 employees to 100 in 1 year. It was fantastic. So when you get to, you should be starting a lot earlier. And really, when you're going to start figuring that out is when you start to realize that you're leaving money on the table because you're being so inefficient. And when you're leaving money on the table, it forces you to try to say, like, okay, what's the problem? And you're probably going to find one person that is that super connector in your company, and that person is going to be your lifeline on the RevOps side. And then it's up to the C-suite to really invest in it.
So let's double click on it for a second. So you said it's really hard to define RevOps. So give us a 30-second pitch on your ideal profile for a RevOps person.
Ideal profile for a RevOps person. Well, you're looking at him right now, Dale. No, it's I would say the ideal person for RevOps is they have to be a super connector. So they have to be someone that is really good at bridging relationships. You also have to be someone that has, I believe, a high, technical acumen, that they understand technology enough that and how the data flows in an organization, that you can have those conversations with not only the end users, but the C-suite, as well as your engineering and data teams. So that technical piece is important. You don't have to be able to code, but you need to be able to understand it enough. I think the other thing that's really important to these people is a strong understanding of the business and their objectives, because you're going to start hearing problems all day long from people of like, this doesn't work. I need it fixed now. This doesn't work. I need it fixed. And you have to be smart enough to understand if this is truly going to increase the value of the company or help the company achieve its goals, or if it should be tabled for a little while. There are many goals that I hear every single day that are incredibly righteous and we should be doing them. It's just not the right time. And being a good RevOps person, you understand the business from every angle, so that you can, make the right decision for the company.
Who should RevOps report to? See, a very short, easy question.
The CEO.
Why?
Why? Because they're the ones that are normally setting the direction of the company, and it's the RevOps, whoever your head of RevOps, it's their job to make sure that it's aligned. You also have you'll have your CTO, your CFO, and all of them, and they sometimes don't even know the initiatives between them. The CEO will give a directive to the sales org, or to the engineering org, or any of the orgs, CS, whatever they might be. And if they are sometimes not that connected. So that RevOps person, whoever that is, should be at that same level and being able to help coordinate all of that.
Do we think the CEO is needs to get into the detail level of RevOps? Or I'm curious because CEO has a lot of other things to do besides revenue, right? And so from a RevOps perspective, is it, playing devil's advocate here, should it roll up to a CRO who's responsible for revenue across the organization, or still to that CEO?
I think it could, and I think it depends on the level of the organization. I don't. Most companies don't hire a CRO until a little bit further on. Again, you can negotiate. You can sort of sit here and say like, well, it should be actually earlier, but the likelihood of them doing that is fairly slim. So I do think that. Yeah, it's a good question. It's a great question. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. We just did a hot take on this with Molly and Mallory, and I always think it goes to the CRO, just because I think the CEO has so many other things that they need to really get done. If the CRO really owns revenue from marketing to sales to customer success, then they need all the data points to roll into the CEO and make the decisions across those organizations. And I think from a connector standpoint, if it's really RevOps, once again, RevOps is tricky, right? Because you have sales ops that are now RevOps, or you have marketing ops that now are RevOps, and that's not really RevOps. But so then
I was just going to say, marketing ops and sales ops and CS ops are not RevOps. They're siloed 100%. Functions, and this is, I think, part of what contributed to this growth at all costs bullshit that we all went through, where you had this MarOps person who was like so focused on getting Marketo the way it needs to be and getting your leads where they need to be. And sales ops is trying to get Salesforce and get the opportunity object looking pretty. By the way, it's not a sales ops person. What you really have is a Salesforce administrator, but I digress. And then you have CS ops, which isn't really CS ops. You have like a gain site administrator, and you don't have someone looking at, for lack of better terms, and we talk about this a lot, the entire customer journey and how to operationalize that to align with the buyer's journey and maximize revenue.
Right. And being able to have someone that overlooks that is incredibly important. And when I guess, reporting to the CEO is one thing, and having sort of directives. If you have someone that's really good in this role, you're also finding someone that can soak everything up like a sponge and not need much input. That they know the organization. I mean, the reality is the RevOps person that you have, and being a really good RevOps person means you probably know more about how the company runs than the CEO. If you ask the CEO to do any type of individual task in there, nine times out of 10, they probably don't know how. And that's
should they?
They should not.
Okay.
Right. They should not know that. They should not know. They should have a general understanding of like, this is our sales process, but they shouldn't know like how to create a deal in the pipeline, or how to move it or whatever it is. They should know how to get some baseline reports that are important to them, but they shouldn't know how to do the individual reports for an individual person. So that RevOps person knows more. So when they're starting to sit in these meetings and seeing these decisions being made, like wheels are turning. I'll be in these, like my notebook is a bunch of chicken scratch, and it's just like, yep, this is going to impact this, and this. And I leave these meetings and I'm like, I set up Zooms with every single head of those departments to say, this is coming and you need to know. And this is what I'm going to do to try to solve this for you. So reporting to the CEO, I think it works for a time period, and then you're probably right, it could go to a CRO, but a CRO comes down the line.
People buy from people. That's why companies who invest in meaningful connections win. The best part? Gifting doesn't have to be expensive to drive results, just thoughtful. Sendoso's intelligent gifting platform is designed to boost personalized engagement throughout the entire sales process. Trust me, I led sales for a Sendoso competitor, and I could tell you, no one does gifting better than Sendoso. If you're looking for a proven way to win and retain more customers, visit Sendoso.com.
What we've heard is that on that show, they talked about the CFO, reporting to the CFO. They talked about reporting into the CRO. They talked about, like, does it sit in operations, which seems a little bit outside of like revenue. And I do think like the CEO, maybe it's a dotted line because maybe they need certain data points that they don't need all the time, but they need for board meetings, and they need for understanding how, like, not necessarily down to the conversion rate of a lead, but what's our close rate at a macro level, so that we can say to the board, look at, we have 25% close rates. Our NRR is at 110%. Like, they need those macro things, but they don't need to know what ends up rolling into the 110% NRR. So
Exactly.
besides being a connector, what are 3 other attributes from a RevOps person that need to be like must-haves, can't live without?
You definitely need to be a great problem solver. You need the ability to be able to multitask, and multitask is because you're going to be working in different departments at different hours of the day. Every single different meeting that you have is typically not with the same people. It's with different people, and understanding the entire architecture of your RevOps system. I don't know what else would be another one. I would say be okay with no, because you're going to hear no from a lot of different department heads of like, nah, I'm not doing that. And you have to have a really good reason. But the fortunate thing is, and if you're also really good at RevOps, you have the data to back up your decision that they can't say no.
Yeah.
So if you do that part right, and you can show them the data to say, if you don't do this, this is how it's going to impact you. It's pretty powerful.
And maybe that in particular is one of the reasons why they report to the CEO, like to have the backing of the CEO to make these decisions.
Absolutely. That executive buy-in and investment is incredibly important. It's incredibly important.
When you're looking at things through your investor lens, you're doing diligence, you're, working with founders. How does your hat change? Being a RevOps professional, what do you look at that maybe other investors don't? And who do you talk to that maybe other investors don't think to talk to as part of the process?
I mean, it depends on the stage. If you're going incredibly early stage, they might not even have the full team or the right team. But when you're starting to try to make that first solid investment, you are looking at the entire team as a whole and how they are thinking about, architecting their product. The farther that you get along in the funnel, you definitely want to make sure that they have a good understanding of their RevOps, their system, how everything works, and that it, like I was saying before, it's ready to scale. It doesn't make sense for you at a certain stage later on in the investment, cycle to, sort of sit there and say, I'm ready to give you a whole bunch of money, but it seems like you're not ready. You're actually going to burn half of this money that I gave you just to be able to set up your system properly. Now, that also might be the investment. If that part is out there, it's like, it's just a different part in funding. Like that might just be earlier on. I'm investing for you to say, get the right people in and get the right, tools in place, get the right connections in place, make sure you have the right reports so that when I ask you, like, how's your sales funnel, you can actually show me your sales funnel. If I ask for a list of your customers and you can't give me a list of your customers, it's like, that's a problem. You should be able to give that to me in like less than 5 minutes. So it depends on the different funding round that you're in, but the farther along in the funnel, I'm looking for a lot more detail to make sure that you're ready for the money, and that what you actually say you're going to be utilizing the funding for is that you're ready for it.
Yeah. And that's a funny thing. Like a lot of startup companies we're starting to work with, as they struggle with some of the revenue targets that are, because many challenges in the market, you're going through an election year. Like there's a lot of things that end up happening through this stage of the journey.
Yep.
And you start getting customers. I find that a lot of people may hide, like, hey, we got a couple of close customers, but are they really using the product? Are they really like driving usage? What's their average daily usage or monthly active users or whatever metric you're using? And do investors just miss that because they're so focused on data or so focused on revenue that they don't understand, like, of the customers, what's the active usage? And is that shifting in the investment world?
I think it's still the numbers are still relevant, of course, but it's all there's also a piece too around, and you guys always talk about it. It's do you have the right ICP? Are you going after the right customer? Because you might have a ton of users, and that looks great initially because everyone's trying it, but then those customers might realize whatever you're selling is actually not the right choice for them. Everyone wants to try everything, so your numbers could look great, but if you might find out that your ICP is actually for a smaller niche audience that is actually willing to pay more, or you're spending too much money going after the wrong customers, if making sure that they actually understand that ICP is important. Again, making sure you're not spending time on the wrong customers.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, right? Like when you look at ICP and spending time on the right customers, I can't tell you how often we talk to people who have no clue who the right customer is. And, I'm going to sell my product to everybody, right? Who are you going to sell your product to? B2B software companies. That is not an ICP. Like,
No.
Let's be very clear. Even now, like we're working with a client and they sell to higher education. And while that's great broadly, who do you sell to? Higher education. No, you don't sell to just higher education. That you have to get more specific than that. Otherwise, you are not selling anything to anyone. So I think that's an area where there needs to be a lot of focus, and RevOps could certainly help provide the data there. What does RevOps not do, Chris? Because I think what I've seen in a lot of orgs is people look at RevOps as you are my go-to for all things. If I need a CRM field change, I am going to message Chris. If I have a question about where the comma goes, I am going to message Chris. If there is anything that is not like a sales leader, a marketing leader, or a CS leader, shit, man, go to RevOps. They'll fix it.
Yep.
What is RevOps not?
Well, I think you sort of just said it, but I mean, there's plenty of things that I would like not to do. I'll tell you that. When you're the jack of all trades, specialist to none, you sit there and you say, why am I the one doing this task right now? It should be easier. I think that if it touches revenue or the customer journey, it's RevOps. If it's something that is incredibly specialized inside a silo, that's where I think it's still worthy to have like a MarTech person that is the one that's helping keep your HubSpot emails all set up and your workflows going. Like, so when it gets down to that detail level, it should be handled by the individual silos, but only making sure that, whoever's doing the RevOps is making sure everyone is connected on that change. You can if you're going and advertising to a very broad group of individuals, like you're not actually using targeted advertising, it's just we're going broad and you go after everyone, you have to make sure that like the RevOps person is not in charge of trying to understand those customers that are coming into the funnel and saying, okay, like now we get family type or like moms, let's say, and they have a family and they want to go in at this angle. We have more technical people and the product is good for them, but we have to nurture them a separate way. That stuff is not necessarily the RevOps job. My job is to give you that data and make sure then you're able to make that decision. My job is to be able to help highlight the right data at the right times. Because even me showing you one little field, I found like times where I'm working with the sales org and they're like, if I have this one field and it's like a drop down with a yes or a no, like I'll be able to go ahead and actually increase my funnel by 30%. And small changes of the right data at the right time can do that. But my job is not to figure out sometimes what that data might be. You look for the specialist there, and then I'm going to help you, bring it to life.
I love it. It's so hyper relevant, especially as you scale, right? What do you focus on? What do you need other people on? Does RevOps help with, sorry, Dale, last question, then I'll let Dale. Does RevOps help with that capacity planning as far as what people you need and where to put them? Is that an area where you would involve RevOps?
I would say yes, because sometimes there are just solutions that can be solved by a piece of tech and now you don't need to hire the person. There's other times where you might go and say I could actually remove some headcount or we will redistribute headcount to other areas because there's faster ways of doing things. Especially when you're scaling, everyone is wearing 10,000 hats and you might want to remove 5 or 6 hats from a person so they can specialize in one thing.
Love it.
Yeah.
For people that are in sales ops or in marketing ops and they kind of want to be RevOps, what are the things that they should be trying to figure out or work on to be better as a revenue operations holistically? Because I think there's people that are transitioning from each one of these roles.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do to start like learning a true RevOps perspective?
It's definitely coming at it with a more holistic view. If you are only focused on your organization, it's like, that's great. You know, sales inside and out, but you really have to understand how that, and this goes back to like, does your organization truly embrace go-to-market and true go-to-market where
well, that's a
everyone
bigger
has
question.
to, I know,
That's
right? So
definitely a
it's like,
bigger
if you hit that benchmark, it's like, you're probably doing it and everyone's going to be great. But if you're not in an organization that does embrace that, then it's very important for people to try to get that holistic view of how their decisions actually impact other parts of the organization. And instead of just looking at, what's in front of you, or like your manager says, I need you to speed this part up by, 5%. You might be able to go and say, well, let me talk to the marketing person and see what they're doing over here, because they might be able to make a change that costs them nothing, might even help them. But now I'm able to turn that 5 into a 10% gain on the sales side. So that holistic view is important. And if you're only in it for yourself or only in it for your direct team and not looking at it from an organizational level, that's where you're probably going to go wrong. So that's probably the most important thing. You have to take a holistic look in everything you do.
I love that. Yeah.
Gold.
I think that's I think that is a big challenge for a lot of people coming through it. But all the people that I've known that have been amazing at RevOps, such as yourself, it is a holistic view, the connector, it's like a different mentality and perspective at a corporate level. And I think, a lot of, you said something interesting in that conversation, which was they have to be go-to-market like ready. Like the organization needs to be go-to-market ready. And I'm just curious how many of those companies go into investments thinking they're ready and they're really not ready. It's not a question. It's just
a lot.
Most. But I would say that there's a lot more now that are at least they want to be go-to-market ready and they're trying, and sometimes they just need help. And sometimes they just need help. And, but the thought is there. They want to be go-to-market ready. And they just need it. They just need assistance.
Yeah.
And finding those like individual RevOps people sometimes are hard. Like people will look at me. I have probably 2 or 3 interviews a month with internal employees that are like, how do I do what you do? And just like Thanksgiving and Christmas, I don't know. I just sort of figured it out. But I asked them to start taking that holistic view. And when I'm finding people to add to my teams, a lot of times I am trying to pick the diamonds in the rough from certain places. Unfortunately, ops in general has always been looked at as a cost center, and RevOps is finally a way to be able to say we're not necessarily a cost center. We're here to actually increase your profit margins and stuff like that. And when I can try to grab the best people, those managers now understand, like, I might be taking your all-star, but that all-star is now going to be put to good use across the entire company and not just your org. And this is actually a promotion for that person.
I like that too. So much value, so much knowledge, and all things RevOps. Chris, before we wrap it up, we have a little tradition here. We want to do a little bit of rapid fire. You get 10 words or less. Otherwise, a gong comes out and bops you, or bops Dale. So in that case, you could go like 40 words. No, doesn't bop me. I have the button to end the podcast. So with that said, early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
What's the most used emoji in your Slack messages?
Oh, definitely the laughing, tear-eyed, smiley face.
And
It's
that's
mostly
at the
so
CEO
I can break the
usually,
ice.
right? It's usually
Absolutely. It's like, you want to do that emoji.
Other than your phone, what's the one tech device you can't live without?
I'll say can't live without my watch, just my iWatch, but I wish I could get rid of it.
Speaking of that, what's the first app you check when you wake up?
Slack. Everything revolves around Slack.
Yeah. What's your favorite guilty pleasure snack?
Ice cream.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You and Dale.
There we go.
Let's wrap this up. What's your vacation destination?
Ultimate vacation.
Ultimate. If I was to go somewhere, I would love to be in like like a mountainside house, like in Switzerland, and like overseeing the mountains. Give me some snowstorms. I'd love that. Grand fireplace. That's it. That's the dream.
So you're a ski guy.
Love it.
I am. I'll say snowboarder. I snowboard still.
Snowboard, yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
I love it. Chris, thank you so much for joining the show. We appreciate it. Learned a lot of things, man. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Chris.
it.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.